Hi, I'm Callie Kuntz. I am a pain recovery coach here at lin.health. Welcome to our webinar today. When I was asked a few weeks ago what I might like to talk about, pain identity is really what came to mind. It's been on my radar as a coach, and it's been on my radar as a part of my own recovery. And I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it online. So I thought this would be a really good topic to approach today. To get started, I'd just like to take a minute and do a little practice with you. I'd like to pause and do a little attending to our internal state practice. So if you'd like to do a little hand on the heart, that's fine. But I just like to invite you just to take a second and just to do a few nice, relaxing belly breaths and just relax your shoulders and your body and just kind of center yourself in the space where you are right now, and invite you just to relax and prepare yourself just to hopefully enjoy a nice discussion with Shannon and I about who we are without chronic pain. So I thought I would start today by sharing a story. It's actually a post that was on Facebook this week. And it really resonated with me. It really touched me. Matter of fact, I got big tears in my eyes when I read it. This is what she said, and I'm using this with permission, by the way. She said, "My 48th birthday was yesterday. My son took me out to dinner. We have a close relationship and had a great talk. I've been in chronic pain since 20. It's been a part of my life so long. I just learned about TMS this year. I've been working hard at my mind-body approach ever since. My son has been my biggest supporter for so long, but he gave me some tough love. He said, 'You need to find a passion that takes up your time and thoughts besides your pain.' Pain has consumed me for so long. Pain has been a part of my identity for so long. I don't even know what I want to do if I didn't have pain. I always avoided because of it, or fearful of it being triggered. I have zero artistic abilities. I'm not creative. But I don't want to do anything physically exerting yet. I don't know what I want, who I am, what I like. Fear and pain have ruled me. What have you done to get past and through this? How do I start? I feel stuck. I don't know myself. I have suffered and people pleased for so long. How do I figure out me? Especially crippled with fear. I can't have meditation as my only hobby. Thoughts, suggestions." This post has already garnered over 234 comments in less than a week on Facebook. It obviously touched a nerve, and people feel for this person. They understand her. They look to her and say, "I see me. I see me in that person." So I thought today that this would be our topic, that we would talk about who are we without chronic pain, and what happens after we get better or while we're getting better. Where do we go? What do we do? How do we kind of rediscover who we are and what matters to us and what direction we want to take in our lives? So I thought we'd start there. And I asked Shannon to join me today for a reason. I picked Shannon because she's half my age. I wanted you guys to be able to see that age isn't part of the question necessarily. It happens to a lot of people in chronic pain. And I also know that she has a really beautiful story about how she overcame her chronic pain, but how she also rediscovered who she wanted to be and where she wanted to go in life. So I am excited to have her working with me today. A little about me. Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
I was just going to say thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here and really just so grateful for you for coming up with this topic, because it, as you read in that post, like it touches so many different people's lives on so many different levels. So yes, take it away. Would love to hear your backstory and your rediscovery too.
Okay. Well, it's a tender topic for me. As I was preparing this, I thought, oh, I'm all done with this. I've already worked through all this stuff. And then I realized, well, no, I haven't. I still have work to do on this. So I'm sure that there will be times when I might get a little bit emotional. And please understand that it's just part of the process. And we're all learning about this. And growing and recovering together, because as a chronic pain coach, I started out as a chronic pain patient. So we all have these things that we need to work through, and we work through them together. So I thought I would share a little bit about my backstory. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 1998. I've been having chronic pain since 1996. I spent 23 years in the medical desert trying to find the cure for pain for me. By the time I got to a place where I found mind body medicine, I had just about given up. I was at a point in my career where I couldn't do it anymore. So I took a medical leave of absence and decided that this is it. This is going to be where I find what to do. I had gotten to a point in my life where I was just getting up, going to work, coming home, taking medicine, sitting in the bathtub, eating dinner, going to bed, getting up, going to work. It was just this never-ending cycle of just plain, boring, small, little, lonesome life. And then on weekends, I slept, and that was my life. And so I was very desperate to find a solution. And when I found out that I could use brain retraining and to get better, it was a godsend and a lifesaver to me. And I started out my journey doing Unlearn Your Pain, which was Dr. Schubner's program, and then Curable, and got about 60% better. But I got stuck. I was stalled. I wasn't getting better after a while. And I was lucky enough to get to meet Dr. Schubner, and I was his demo patient for a physician's training he did. And afterwards we were talking, and I told him a little bit about where I was and how I was feeling, that I felt stuck. And he just looked at me and he said, "Callie," he said, "you've done the work." He says, "Go live your life." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So what does that mean? Go live my life?" I gave up my career. I'm retired. I don't even really know what I like or what makes me happy anymore. And so that's what set me out on my journey of rediscovery. Who am I? What do I like? And what matters most for me right now in this place where I am? And so that's my backstory. Shannon, you want to fill us in a little bit about you?
Yes, absolutely. We have some similarities. I also had fibromyalgia. I got diagnosed in 2008, but it had been going on for at least 4 years prior to that. I was very young. I was in my teens, and it was really difficult because that also was around the time that you start to discover yourself. So when I found this work and eventually recovered, it was really difficult. I went through kind of this darkness for a period because I didn't know who I was without it. And I felt really lost and scared because for so long, all I wanted was to not be in pain anymore. And when that happened, there was a void. And so I realized it really wasn't enough to not want to be in pain. I needed more. And when I was in pain, it felt like too much to ask for, right? Like it's too much to ask to have a loving relationship or be able to travel or feel fulfilled with work. All I wanted was to not have pain. But then there was this void afterwards. And I had other things besides fibromyalgia. I also had chronic migraines. I had digestive issues, gastroparesis. I had food allergies, which I no longer have sensitivities to foods anymore. And it was through finding this work and finding the fact that you could recover, which is what I had been looking for years and years, because I went down lots of really weird, strange rabbit holes of how to heal yourself. And very, very odd things, but as you do when you want to get better, right? But I have now become a very someone has deemed a fun hobby person through my rediscovery of myself as well. So there is hope, and also it can be a little difficult sometimes when you're wading through all of this, but there's people like Callie and I and thousands of others that have have done it, and there is another side. And as Callie said, it's still a process. There's still some grief and some sadness to the years lost. But now that we're coaches, we also understand how to reframe thoughts and help you get through those things. So it's really interesting too. I love getting to witness the experience of the clients and the members that I work with, and their own rediscovery too is really beautiful and fulfilling for me too, because it wasn't just my own journey. I get to see someone else rediscover something for themselves as well.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned all of the rabbit holes you went down, and I think probably in 23 years, it's embarrassing, some of them, that I would never admit in public that I actually did that to try to cure my pain, And so it's fun to hear somebody else say, "Oh yeah, I did some really interesting things trying to get better," because we do. We really, yeah. So thanks for sharing.
And like there's some like guilt and shame around those things because
Yeah.
like I'm so excited to talk about this because there's all a big spectrum of identity. And for me, it was kind of like I had a secret pain identity. Like I didn't talk about it. And I was really ashamed about what I was going through. And also very ashamed of some of the weird things I was trying. I didn't tell my parents I went and saw an angel healer for like a year and a half. like, So they're the people I was closest and I am closest with, so, but really, there's no shame in wanting to feel better at all. So yeah.
No, there isn't. I love it. Thank you, Shannon. You're so cute. Yeah, no, it's true. And I think a lot of people who are watching today will be like, yep, I've been there. I've done that. Yeah. So there was an article published earlier this year in Slate magazine by Isabel Whitcomb, who's a health reporter. And she wrote an article called When Chronic Pain Becomes Who You Are. And in that article, she talks a little bit about her own journey, about how she developed this pain identity. And she talks about how she started trying on the language a little bit at a time, the language of a chronically ill person. And I do think that that's how it works sometimes for some people. It's like all of a sudden you kind of your world becomes a little bit smaller because you feel limited in what you can do and the amount of energy you have to spend on things. And then you start trying on these words like chronically ill. And then other times too, we get labeled by other people with pejorative labels like hypochondriac or, lazy or unmotivated and things like that. So we start kind of applying labels that we hear other people use about themselves. And we start applying labels that we hear other people use about us. And then that even restricts our identities even more. But I liked what she said. She wrote this. She said, by graduate school, wearing braces on my wrists and walking with a limp, I began using the language out loud for the first time in my life. I felt core to my identity, as fundamental to me as the atmosphere or my gender. The sky is blue. I exist in a body that hurts. She goes on to write later in the article that forging an identity around one's pain is a natural response to an isolating and often invisible experience. Internally, it is a way to make sense of what is happening in one's body. Externally, a way to push back on the stigma of the condition, to ask for accommodations and help. And I love how she normalizes that. And it's just completely normal to have this happen. This is not a freakish, weird thing that happens to people. This is normal. And if it's happening to you, that's okay. Like Shannon mentioned before, there are lots of ways to address this and lots of ways to come out of this space. So I'll start a little bit and talk to you about what I did. So I started seeing a pain psychologist because I felt like I was stuck. And when Dr. Schubiner told me to go live my life, I was flummoxed. Like, what does that mean? So I started working with a pain psychologist, and she was really helpful. And what she had me do was create a discovery journal. And anytime I saw anything, heard anything that sounded even the least bit interesting, I put it in that journal. I either wrote it, I cut pictures out of magazines, out of catalogs, pasted them in there. Let me just say that we know ourselves pretty well. I mean, this thought that we don't know ourselves at all is not true. If somebody asks you if you prefer coffee or tea, you can answer right away, right? If you prefer chocolate or vanilla, you know that. It's not like we don't know basic things about ourselves, but what we're missing here is this more deep part of ourselves about what is going to make me happy right now, what is going to bring me joy. And one of the most important parts of recovery, in my opinion, is learning to reincorporate joy and rediscover these things and bring them into your life. Because I think the recovery process is as much additive as it is anything else. You add joy to your life, you add safety, you add peace, you add those things to your life, you bring those in. And so she helped me really do that. And so my discovery journal is full of pictures and ideas and thoughts. And anytime I would see anything that looked good to me, I would do that, put that down and write it down. And then I started trying them. And that's the scary part. And after I'm going to have Shannon ask Shannon to share her point of view and perspective. But after she does, we'll talk a little bit about what some of the obstacles and roadblocks are for people, because it's a problem. Sometimes fear can really get in our way, especially if we've been inactive for a long time or we've lost touch with ourselves for a long time. Fear really gets in the way. So for me, I'm a fearful person anyway. That was part of my pain identity. I'm afraid of hurting myself. I'm afraid of doing hard things. I'm afraid of change. I'm afraid of the unknown. What if it doesn't work? What if I do this and I find out that I'm truly am incapable and I am stuck in this place forever? So learning to reframe those thoughts was really important. And a pain psychologist, a pain therapist was really helpful for me in that regard. But it was really interesting, the things that caught my eye, like some of the things I put on my things I was interested in were kayaking and nature hiking. And I am not nature girl. I mean, usually if I can have sparkles and doing things like that, girly things, makeup and fashion, those were my things. Outdoors was not my thing, but all of a sudden I discovered myself drawn to nature, drawn to photography, drawn to different things that I never really thought of before. I'd always thought of myself as, this is me, this is my personality, this is who I am. And by just doing this discovery journal helped me really break through some of those ideas. And then having somebody that had my back while I tried new things was really important when I first got started as well. So that's kind of how I started breaking free from this conundrum of, what am I going to do with myself now that I don't have chronic pain all the time? Shannon, what about you? Tell me about you.
Yeah, my rediscovery, it was really interesting because I feel like a lot of things that helped me get through chronic pain are things that I loved and enjoyed, like looking at gardens and being out in nature and art and different things. But some of the things that I loved, I was unable to do because of the pain. So I got back into dancing. I read a bunch of books that really helped me. I stopped reading like self-help books and I stopped listening to all of the pain recovery podcasts I was really hardcore into for a year when I was doing my recovery. I
Mhm.
kind of had to stop being in the world of chronic pain recovery for a little bit in order to branch out and see, oh, what else is happening? What else could I do? One of the things that really helped me was to start to change my self-concept and my own identity, from like this fear thought that came up when I was really in it was, I have been sick for so long. What if I don't know how to be well? Like this doubt that creeps in, that you don't know how to do what it is you want to do, or that it's not possible to be well when you've been sick for so long. And that was just fear. That was doubt and fear. And now thinking back on it, I remember crying saying that thing, but now I think about it and I kind of laugh, like, of course you'll know how to be well. You just haven't felt that way. And so it's a learning process, right? So it was a rediscovery of learning what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And actually, I don't have to go lay outside in the sun because I don't feel well. I can go lay outside and read a book because that's what I enjoy doing. And kind of changing that that way that I viewed myself as a sick person to, oh, what would the Shannon I want to be? What would she do today? Or what would she and how would she respond to this situation or this thought? And not letting those fear thoughts stand in the way of things that I wanted to do. And I, like you, tried a lot of different things. Fencing, kickboxing, dance, all different types of dance. I took voice lessons again, which I'd love to get back into. So things that you think you're not supposed to do when you get older, or, not everyone thinks that, but sometimes you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be serious and I'm supposed to be focused on work or whatever. Even that, like for so long, I couldn't work full time because I was sick. And so working full time and working at Lin and coaching, and it has been so fulfilling, but it was also kind of a transition for me, going from believing that I couldn't do it to, oh, I'm doing it. And also this feels a little uncomfortable sometimes because I don't know what I'm doing quite yet. Think of that.
Yeah, I think one of the obstacles is that it's okay to be a beginner again.
Mhm.
It's okay to be the one that doesn't know what they're doing. And for those of us who have perfectionist personalities, that is a really hard thing to say. I don't know what I'm doing, and I may look foolish while I do this, and that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
totally. And that you
yeah.
can go to a dance class and not know anything at all about dance, but you can just want to be there and
Mhm.
see what happens. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So you had a little bit different situation than me. So I was in my mid-30s when I started having chronic pain, but you were just a teenager.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about how that was kind how you really were able to break free from that? Because I think when you are developing your identity as a teen and yourself, how you perceive yourself and your place in the world, and it had to have been a challenge to deal with some of those thoughts about who
Mm.
you were. So how can you be a little more specific about how you did that?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. One of the things that I resisted for a very long time was talking about what I was dealing with anyone basically other than my mom or close family members and some friends. I have a really lovely family and they were super supportive, but sometimes it was even hard to talk about it with them. I resisted joining support groups because I didn't want to try on the language of chronic pain, because I didn't want to get stuck there. And then, of course, I did end up getting stuck there for like 17 years, but that's a different experience. But it's these things that as a young woman and a young girl, being so confused about who I was because I didn't feel like my peers. I felt like a middle-aged woman. I even had doctors tell me, oh, you have that, like, oh, you have this. Oh, people, that's for people in their mid 40s, that's for women in their mid 40s, like that I wasn't supposed to be feeling the way that I was feeling, but that's how it was. So there was a lot of shame and hiding of that part of myself. I lost a lot of friends. I pushed away a lot of friends, I guess, too, because I wouldn't open up and I didn't feel like I was progressing at the same rate as everyone else. And having that compassion for that former self, I think is really important. And we see that a lot in the work that we do with our clients as well and our members. But yes, I think I had to do a little bit more really personality and really like self-discovery inquiry. I read some books, I did some personality tests. I would recommend maybe doing those when you are feeling confident about yourself, because I did them when I was feeling pretty low, and now I'm not even sure if they were relevant. But just asking myself questions. I would watch philosophy videos and try to get to know myself. Oh, what do I like? Like, who am I? What am I doing? And I think you do that when you're younger, but because I kind of had to grow up in other ways, I didn't grow up in certain ways, other instances too. So it was fun to rediscover that and challenge my own self-concept of what I thought I was capable of, and see that, oh, actually I'm much more capable than I thought I was. And I'm still working on that self-trust and that confidence is still blossoming, still blooming. And I think that's kind of a lifelong process, but normalizing that as well. But I do think that it is really tough for young people, because what I did was I stopped myself. And not everyone does this, but I did, and hopefully this may resonate for someone else. But I stopped myself from progressing in other areas of my life because I thought the only thing that mattered was getting better or getting rid of my pain. And maybe I wasn't lovable or I wasn't capable if I still had the pain. So it was really reframing those thoughts through work with friends, therapists, my own internal inquisitiveness, but also you don't have to do it alone, which is a really beautiful thing too. You're meant to have community, you're meant to have help.
Right. But I think one of the things about chronic pain is that it's isolating a lot
Mhm.
of times, or other chronic conditions like chronic fatigue, IBS. All of those things are things that are that carry a little bit of shame with them as well. I
Mhm.
know that, you talked a little bit about how your pain identity was different. My family was really were really the only people who saw me being myself in chronic pain. I spent a lot of time pretending and at work and in other places that I was fine and normal, because I just felt like that's part of my perfectionist personality, and part of my own issues with being overly conscientious and that kind of stuff. And so I hid the fact that I was struggling and in pain from a lot of people as long as I could, until I just couldn't do it anymore.
Mhm.
And that, for some reason, chronic pain sometimes carries a shame with it. Like, why can't I do this? Everybody else does this. Everybody else lives. Everybody else is healthy. Everybody else feels good. Everybody else accomplishes all this stuff. Why can't I do that? What's wrong
Mhm.
with me? And sometimes you do kind of turn that blame back on yourself a little bit. I'll also say too, for me and my identity, I think for me, my career was a huge part of my identity as an educator, as a teacher, and to lose that and decide to give that up, um, because I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit in a chair any longer to grade papers, to plan lessons. So I was grading papers laying on my stomach on tables in my classroom after my students would leave. And it just you just can't live like that for forever. And so giving up that identity, I am a teacher, was
Mhm.
really, really hard for me. It was like, so I don't know what I am if I'm not that either. So I don't know who I am outside of my chronic pain, and I don't know who I am outside of this career. So who am I, and what's going to happen to me now? So I thought maybe this would be a good time to segue into some of the roadblocks, because
Mhm.
we've already touched on some of them, the biggest one being fear.
Mhm.
For me, fear of injury was huge. I have a, congenital fusion in my neck, which is at C5-6, which causes a lot of consternation whenever anybody looks at my MRIs, because there's a little bit of creative wiring in there. And I was told very early on that you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. If you hurt your neck, you will be paralyzed. So I got a lot of medical trauma. Then, as my pain gradually spread from my neck to other parts of my body, I just was so fearful that I was going to hurt myself, that I was afraid to do anything and afraid to try new things. And I'm proud to say that this winter, as part of my journey of rediscovery, I skied again for the first time in
Whoa.
30 years.
Oh,
I got back up on skis and only fell once. Yay me!
yeah,
And
that's beautiful.
it was spectacular. It was a
That's
great one.
so
But
beautiful.
but the key to that for me, overcoming the fear of movement, was doing things that I was fearful about with people that I trusted,
Yeah.
like either with my husband, who's a very confident, capable skier, or with my physical therapist. I worked with a physical therapist for a while to recondition my body, because by the time I got to a point where I was getting well, my body was already at a place where I was very weak for a person my age, and I didn't have a lot of stamina, a lot of strength. And so it took me about 10 weeks to get back to the strength of a normal woman my age. But I worked with somebody that I trusted, that I knew wouldn't let me hurt myself, that they would be there with me, stand right next to me. You're okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And I think sometimes we get embarrassed when we need to ask other people for help, but sometimes overcoming fear, especially fear of movement, is something where you really need to you have to feel safe when you're doing it. And because you don't want to trigger another pain episode. I'll also add that as I've been exploring the world through hiking, if I'm going on a hike where I don't know where I'm going, I always bring my trekking poles, because you just never know what you're going to find. And it makes me feel safe. So now I can explore the world by myself. I don't need to be with somebody else, but I have my tools with me. So it makes me feel safe and gives me that capability to kind of push beyond that fear a little bit sometimes, because I think for me, fear of hurting myself was huge. It was huge.
And
What
what
about
would
you?
you
Did
say?
you ever have that?
Yeah, I did. Maybe not to that extent. It was more like, oh, well, I'm just not capable of doing that.
Mhm.
Or, I was afraid to start moving again because I was afraid I would trigger a migraine, or, with the blood pressure, and there's all these things. And
Mhm.
so when I started moving again, and I was going to ask you, like, what would you say to someone who is stuck in fear and at home on the couch, and they know, hey, I really want to try again. They're not going to go skiing the next day, right? Like, it
No.
has to be baby steps. And I think, yeah.
Yeah, I saw this really interesting thing about baby steps the other day and it was, baby steps for babies are huge leaps. They're big, hairy heels. And we use the word baby steps all the time to imply just these
Mhm.
tiny, tentative little things. But when you watch a toddler first learn to take steps, there's these giant lurching movements as they learn to balance their bodies around. And I was thinking, yeah, I love this analogy of baby steps. I think it's awesome, because sometimes the act of doing something that's hard or difficult does look a little awkward at first. But
Mhm.
because when you think about it, when babies first start to walk, they're not graceful at it, for sure. And so I love that you use that term, baby steps. Um, that's a really good question too, about what do you tell people who are stuck in that fear place. And as a person whose first words were "afraid of it," that was my first sentence,
Oh,
according
wow.
to my mother, "afraid of it," because I was afraid of everything. Um, I know. So I can speak from authority here that really finding someone that you trust, a buddy, someone you can be with that you trust, will not let you hurt yourself, is really, really important in that
Mhm.
process. It sounds maybe ridiculous, but seriously, for me, knowing that I was safe was the biggest part of the battle for me. And I started out with the lightest weights. I'm like, this is easy, And then my trainer's like, yeah, whatever. Pretty soon it wasn't easy anymore, but he started me out in a way that was just like so easy. So I could build my confidence, I could build my strength, and build the trust in my body again, because I didn't trust my body. I was like, well, what if my knee goes out again, or what if my shoulder dislocates again? Because it's part of my constellation of symptoms is I got very loose ligaments, and my shoulders would pop out, my ribs would pop out, my hips would go all over the place. And they don't anymore, by the way, since I've gotten better. But yeah, so I had all these scary things that would happen with my body, and I was really afraid of
Mhm.
that. So having somebody help me build my confidence was super important. So yeah. One of the other things that I put down too was not just fear of movement, but also fear of the unknown,
Mhm.
that I jotted down. I think a lot of people struggle with questions like, what if this doesn't make me happy? What if I try this and it doesn't work? Or what if I try this and I look really seriously foolish?
Mhm.
Or, that what if I try this and I can't?
Mhm.
And, once again, going back to that thought that it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to start. It's
And
okay not
approaching
to
it
be
with
the expert.
play. Mhm.
Yeah. It's okay to take ugly, lurching baby steps, right? Instead of graceful tippy toes forward. sometimes it doesn't look like that, right?
No, it doesn't. And sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't.
Well, I'm a lurcher. I'll admit it. I lurch. The other thing that we've touched on, both of us, in what we've talked about is grief.
Mhm.
Grief, anger, resentment. Um, so, you talked about years lost, so it was really interesting to me that I was coming out of this, that all of a sudden I started feeling all of these emotions that I didn't expect. I felt grief for the years I lost, grief for the time I lost with my children when they were young, grief for career opportunities lost,
Mhm.
grief for friendships that I didn't maintain because I just didn't have the energy to do it. Or, yeah, and grief for a lot of things that I was sad. I was so sad, and I really wasn't expecting these feelings. I didn't realize that that would be part of the process. And also a little bit of resentment, like resenting my body. Why did you do this to me? How could you have done this to me? Why would my, and especially when you learn about your brain, I hear this a lot from people I work with. It's like, why would my brain do that to me? You know, why is my brain not being helpful? Why is it protecting me in this destructive way? Or what appears to be a negative way. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I had a lot of grief to process. And discovered when I was preparing for this that I still feel really, really sad. And I had a beautiful discussion with my daughter, who's 29 now, but she was 4 when I first started having chronic pain. And so she knew me as a mom who was limited in her energy and in her ability to always be participative in the things that she did. And as a mom, I really regret having kids that I let quit do things when, because I didn't have the energy to force them or pressure them, or I hate to use those words, force and pressure, encourage them to continue on because I just didn't have the energy for it. And I was talking to her and I was talking about one summer that I remember. I was on a lot of muscle relaxants at the time, so I call it my baclofen summer. And it's a period of time when I was on such high doses of muscle relaxants that I have no memory of that summer at all. But I know I was there doing things with my kids because there's pictures, there's evidence. But she shared a story with me that she said that she remembers seeing me, sorry, and thinking that I was just an amazing mom and how
Oh,
much she loved me. And that she said she remembers coming out of her kindergarten classroom and seeing me waiting for her. And she said I was wearing a yellow dress with flowers. She
oh,
remembers that. And she says, and I just remember seeing you standing there and being so glad you were my mom.
oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
And sorry, that was
Mhm.
huge for me to hear that because I actually carry guilt, and regret that I wasn't always um, there for my kids. I didn't always prepare great dinners and things like that. That, there's these expectations we have
Yeah.
that we put on ourselves. And when we carry labels like um, partner, mother, daughter, we have expectations that go with those labels about what we should or ought to do. And
Mhm.
I discovered during this process that I had a lot of grief around the things that I didn't do or that I thought I should have done. And so, as we talk about reframing language, sometimes we need to have hard conversations too with people and say, I'm having these feelings about what happened during that time. What do you think about that? And to hear them and discover that they don't have those hard, angry feelings that I do. It was
Yeah.
like, really? You don't resent the fact that I wasn't able to take you to do these things and be with you and give you elaborate birthday parties and all those things? And she's like, no, I thought you were an awesome mom. So
Yeah.
having those hard conversations sometimes can be really, really important.
Absolutely, and can be really healing too. And I think it comes back to that idea of like what our self-concept is, what our identity is. And if and a lot of times it helps to ask someone else what they think of us that loves and respects you, because sometimes our own view of ourselves is skewed because of the guilt and the shame and the sadness that's there. And so
Right.
asking, oh, what am I good at? What did you enjoy? Like, because there's more than just the things quote unquote we failed at, or couldn't do. And a lot of times the things that we feel guilty for or are really hard on ourselves for, it's not actually as detrimental as we build it up in our minds, right?
Right, exactly. And to hear it from her point of view was like,
Mhm.
wow, you mean I can let go of that? I don't need to carry that anymore. Wow, burden gone.
Right?
Let's drop that baggage, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's drop that baggage. Let's just put it down and not carry that anymore.
Yeah.
So, well, some of the other things that I thought we could talk about today, but I don't know that we're really going to get to, are things like pain that serves us, that serves a purpose, you
Mhm.
know, and
Yeah.
maybe that would be a great topic for another webinar, actually, you know,
Absolutely.
when we have chronic pain that actually we get benefits from because it serves a purpose in our life. I
Yeah,
think,
even if it's as simple as like, "Oh, I have a headache, so I can't go to that event," and maybe you
mhm,
don't actually wanna go to the event. You can't
right,
say that,
or
but
yeah, exactly. Oh, did that happen to you, Shannon? Really? Oh my gosh. Yeah, or, you know, yeah, reasons to stay at home,
Mhm.
reasons not to do things.
Reasons to have
Yeah,
boundaries, a whole nother
right.
topic too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whole 'nother topic. So I think that we're at a place where it'd be really helpful to kind of recap some of the things we've suggested and kind
Mhm.
of bring it all together about, so here's some things. If you're in this place, in this space, and you're thinking, I don't know who I am or what I want to do, kind of some nuts and bolts, basic ideas. Here's just some ideas of things you can do to help you break free from that. I hope that by having this discussion and normalizing these feelings and normalizing this experience, you've come to realize that, oh, I'm not alone. And oh, a lot of people feel this way. And oh, a lot of people go through this. So the first thing I put here was visualizing, you know, how to get back to doing what your thing. I put visualizing. So I thought I'd share that. I told you that all of a sudden I started seeing kayaks in the Mississippi River near my house, and I thought, I want to do that. I'm gonna be kayaking Callie, you
Mhm.
know. And so I took kayak lessons and got in the kayak, and I loved it. It was fun. I had this vision of myself though, with the kayak on my car, driving to the river every morning, putting my kayak in, paddling around, you know, and just being that this is going to be my hobby. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the kayak lady that I
Mhm.
see in the river all the time. And I am not kayak Callie. I like kayaking and I like to do it sometimes. But the visualization that I had in my head of what it was going to look like for me, Callie, you know, with the kayak on her car, you know, being super cool, sporty girl, that is not me. And that's not my personality. But it was really fun to explore. And as it turned out, it's turned out to be a really fun thing that I like to do with my husband and with my kids. And so it's turned out to be a fun hobby, but I am not kayak Callie and I don't go and I don't put it on my car by myself.
You've redefined who Kayak Callie is.
Yeah, kayak Callie is a little bit different person than I envisioned her to be. But part of the process, if you're afraid to get started, is just visualize yourself doing it.
Mhm.
Visualization is a really awesome tool to kind of help you kind of picture yourself being that person that you want to be, and just taking a while, closing your eyes and just saying, okay, this could be me. I could do this. And so visualization helped me get over my fear of taking kayaking lessons and putting on a bathing suit in front of people and some of those other things that were a little bit of a struggle for me to do, and worrying about getting in and tipping over and all those kinds of things, because those are real fears for me. Like I said, I'm a fearful person. And so visualization was really helpful for me in that. And even if I didn't turn into the kayaking person I thought I would be, I still like to kayak, and I've learned a new thing and learned a new skill, and it's fun. So
Yeah,
anyway, I
I
just thought
love
I would share that with you.
That's such a good one. I also think that leads perfectly into another one that you've mentioned before is that discovery journal and
Mhm,
the pictures that you used. I also used, I guess it's not like closing your eyes and visualizing, but I used Pinterest. I made
mhm,
Pinterest boards of who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. I cut my hair. I did lots of different things. I tried on different types of clothes and fashion to kind of just rediscover myself and who I wanted to be. I called it like Shannon 2.0, like it's like Shannon 2.0. I've got like
I
a
love
little
it.
hat with like Roman letter numeral 2 on it, and just like
Yeah,
made me feel really like, ooh,
yeah,
okay, who am I,
yeah.
and so visualizing and making like Pinterest or even actual aesthetic changes can also be somewhat helpful for folks sometimes too.
I completely agree. I agree 100%. I actually started going to get my nails done again. I started getting my hair cut and colored again,
Mhm.
and doing things that I had let go for a long time. And so as part of self-care and self-esteem too.
Mhm.
It's part of that process. Oh, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. I love it, Shannon 2.0. As if Shannon 1.0 isn't already just amazing, awesome, I love it. Um, Also, thinking about your past, what did you love when you were little? What did you dream about doing when you were young? What are some things that, you know, at 62, I think, oh, who knew that I would have another career at my age? Who thought that I would be working as a pain recovery coach? Never, ever entered my mind. But I did always envision myself in a career where I worked with people and helped people. And so, going back to those childhood dreams, I also used to imagine that I was a horse, which I decided I would not pursue the, the horse, the horse thing. But I did always imagine myself doing a job where I was working with people and around people that were. So I like doing volunteer work. That was part of my recovery is doing volunteer work and exploring what it's like to work in more diverse communities. And looking into volunteerism is another option for people who want to try something a little bit different, but you're feeling a little bit tentative about putting your whole body in the water, but you can put your toe in and
Yeah.
see if the water's warm, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
Sorry.
put your toe in, yeah, because, a lot of the things that Callie and I are talking about today are like the things we got to once we dipped our
Mhm.
toe in. But it starts with dipping the toe in. It starts with, opening up a bit, practicing, doing gradual steps or big lurching baby steps too. Those are good too. But you don't have to, go from doing nothing to dancing all the time or kayaking all the time. It can be
Right.
little things to get you where you want to be. And one of the things that I really liked in self-rediscovery and that have on our suggestions is taking classes or giving yourself a new problem to solve. Master class, there's all sorts of classes online, free things on YouTube. I loved Crash Course, which is such a simple thing. I think they have
Mhm.
now, but there's tons of things that you can do to give yourself a distraction and occupy your mind in a different way because your brain has been used to solving pain or living with pain, and that was part of the identity. And so to branch out, it's going to take some learning and some other things that you can try and not be afraid to
Yeah.
experiment.
Yeah, and make room for spontaneity.
Hmm.
If something just you see something and you think that looks like fun, it's okay to be spontaneous and say, "Let's try it and let's give that a shot." So making room for spontaneity, I think, is really important too, and
Mhm.
honoring those feelings that come up in you and those feelings of curiosity and interest instead of saying, "No, I can't do that." Say, "Okay, what would happen if I explored this? This could be a really fun thing for me," and making room for that. I also like community ed.
Mhm.
I found that there's a lot of courses offered in community ed, and there's really a lot of courses if you get to be my age and you're a senior. A lot of opportunities to do things with other people, to socialize, and also opportunities to explore things in a safe way with somebody who knows what they're doing, and with other people who are checking it out for the first time as well.
Mhm, absolutely. And that's something we haven't really touched a lot on today. But on community building and actually being involved with people who, are either people you would like to be like, or make you feel more empowered in yourself, not always talking about pain or what you've been through and that sort of thing, and opening yourself to more, and to a community that can uplift you and help you in that way, can be really nice as well.
I agree 100%, 100%. And reconnecting with people that you thought you couldn't reconnect with. Sometimes that requires letting go of some of your feelings of, oh, they're going to be angry with me, or projecting those feelings. Because I found that everyone I've reconnected with from high school, college, since I've been recovering, has been so open about reconnecting and rekindling our friendship. And so for me, letting go of this worry about, are they going to think I'm a horrible person because I stopped writing Christmas cards about 10 years ago? I stopped replying to their letters. I didn't call them back. Oops. But yeah, and finding that people are actually more forgiving than you think they might be, and giving that a chance, and also being okay if they're not okay. If they
Mhm.
say, yeah, you're not in my life and I don't really want to reestablish a friendship with you, that's also okay. And that's fine. And learning to be okay with that as well. We should probably leave a few minutes for some questions here. What
Yeah,
do you say?
let's hop over to a few questions. I'll go ahead and ask you a few of them. There's been some great ones that have come up in the chat today. Thank you all
Okay.
so much. So the first one is, did you start living life and doing things while still in a lot of pain, or once it started to subside? Are there any tips on how to overcome anxiety associated with doing things you've not done for so long? Thank you.
That's a really, really good question. And in retrospect, I wish I had started sooner. I actually, I did start my physical reconditioning early on in the process,
Mhm.
but the rediscovery of self, that I didn't start until I was probably 60 or 70% recovered. And I realized that I was kind of just lost. And
Mhm.
interestingly, by starting to re-explore things that make me happy, that bring me joy, make me feel strong, resilient, that actually aided my recovery and boosted me that extra
Mhm.
until I was done, until I became completely pain-free. And so I think that it can certainly be a very efficacious part of the recovery process to start a little bit sooner. In retrospect, I wish I'd started sooner.
Yeah, I absolutely started before I was fully better. And it was only when I was maybe a couple months into learning that you could recover from chronic pain. I maybe wasn't even fully on board yet, but I decided to start moving and show up. Even if I didn't do anything, I gave myself full permission to sit on the mat and not do anything at all. But I did start, and every time that I showed up, which I did, I showed up every single time I said I would. And that was tough, even on really bad pain flare days. But I would move, and I found actually I felt better after moving. I would
Yeah.
say if you do have a lot of fear around movement, it's more helpful to calm those fears before and after the activity, um, or calm before you jump into it. We don't want you to jump in and then have an even bigger flare. But yes, I absolutely agree. Starting movement, or starting to do things you maybe aren't quite ready for, but you think you're almost there. If you're like 80% ready, like you're ready.
Yeah, you're ready. I think too that for me, I always, after I do something that's fearful or a little bit scary, where I'm kind of like perched, like this is new, this is different, I always do some kind of quick meditation afterwards, just to kind of calm everything down, and kind of reestablish that equilibrium in my nervous system again. It's important to do that, and I think that's why, for me anyway, I find that it helped deal with some of the internal stress that happens when you're trying to do something that's hard or different. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a
Yeah.
great question, though. What else
Um,
do we have time for one more?
yeah, let's do maybe one or two more. We've got a quick one here that says, how do you handle thoughts of grief over the loss of who you were or could have been? Any tips?
Um, process. You
Mhm.
need to process those feelings. They're valid, they're real. Whenever somebody talks to me about grief, I always say it. Cry when you need to cry, yell when you need to yell, move your body when you need to move your body. Push those emotions through, feel them, honor them, respect them. Don't. I wouldn't suggest wallowing in them, but letting yourself feel that grief. It's important. Grieving is a healing process in your brain. It's actually your brain rewiring itself and forming a new pattern. So grief is part of that. And so honoring that grief of who you were is, I think, it's just, it's a-okay. It's a-okay to do that, not to wallow in it, not to sit in it forever, but to honor it, feel it, let it move through you, and do what you need to do. And it's okay to cry. It really is. And it's okay to feel loss. Write about it, journal about it if you need to. But
Mhm.
yeah, no. And then start looking forward. When you're ready, start looking ahead to what your new life is going to be. So you're not so focused on what your past was, but you're focused more on what your future is going to be like.
That's beautiful, Callie. And that relates to a couple of the questions we won't quite get to, but they're in regards to anxiety and fear of either symptoms reoccurring or fear of something happening if you were to try something. And what you just said, I feel like answers those things so beautifully.
Yeah,
Moving
yeah. The
forward.
symptoms are going to reoccur, people. They do. I get flare-ups all the time. And it just happens. It's part of the process. Your brain is wired a certain way, and that's just how it is. So expect that. Expect that you're going to have those things happen and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Callie. This was incredible.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It was so delightful to talk to you. It was great to share this time together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for being here. And whatever you're dealing with, know that you're not alone. And we're here to help. If you do have questions or want to reach out afterwards, you absolutely can. Also know that you don't have to go through chronic pain alone. Callie and I both did it alone, and now we get to help others as coaches, help people get through things that we wish we would have had someone to talk to about. And it's a really beautiful, incredible experience. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Callie. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, just a reminder to people, you can recover, you can get better, you can do it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely can. And you don't have to do it alone. So look for an email from us later on, and hopefully, you gain something from this beautiful conversation and share that with Callie and I today. So thank you all so much, and have a beautiful day.